Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts Radio Network. KingofPodcasts.com.
When the best wrestling show I've seen all month hasn't even come from the big two.
Woo! Hey, this is the Nature Boy Rick Flair, and believe it or not, whether you like it or don't like it, learn to love it, because you have to listen to Wrestling is Real. It is the best thing going today. Woo!
The worldwide leader of podcasting excellence. The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents The Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Welcome to episode 974 of the Wrestling is Real podcasts. I am King of Podcasts. I welcome you to the program. So at some point we're going to reach 1,000 probably before the end of the first month of January. We'll probably get to 1,000. I'm guessing, or somewhere in February. But once we get to that moment, we will go ahead and celebrate. And thank you, as always, for finding this show as you always do. Of course, you can always find it, first and foremost, at kingofpodcasts.com, which I finally, in my inevitable wisdom, I realized the site doesn't look right yet. I did more changes to it, and I only want to keep it on one page. I don't need to go and ramble around all the different pages and stuff. There are pages to go to. Obviously, to go and catch all the episodes of other programs, you have to go to different pages to go to those. But I redesigned the website. The logos are back up there. And if you click on one of the logos, it goes to the show that you want to go to. And then from there, you can go and find where you find the shows. Whether it's Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, all those places. And so much more. And of course, you can also find everything on the YouTube channel at King of Podcasts. Feel free to subscribe, hit a notification if you want to go and keep up with what I have on the program. Also, a great place to comment on the program, on any of my episodes. Feel free to do that there because I do take comments there all the time. Just like I'm going to do right now, because there were some comments that came out in the last week or so since I did last week's episode. There's been a couple things. I haven't really brought that back up, but let me just go into this a little bit here and make some points. So last week, the Black Bolt 5514 wrote to me and talked about my one night booking for Divided Delusional Fanatics, last week's episode. And he said, I don't believe Mercedes Moné is winning. I think her winning all those titles, but the one that really matters, keeps us giving her, is the story. She will have to lose all those belts before she wins the big one. This was before Full Gear. If you want to catch the Full Gear recap, I did do one here on the website. Go ahead and look for that, and you can find out more on that. That came from the TikTok feed on some of the clips I put out there as well. Just Some Nerds says, this band said a whole bunch of nothing when I was talking about the fact that any of the wrestling promotions right now, when it comes to WWE or AEW, are not investing enough on the TV product. That's what I said. In so many words. Didn't agree with me, but that's what he says. And then Tyree Taylor says some guy on the internet. And then another comment. Well, nobody comments on the other one, but either which way, I got comments. And if people want to go ahead and, bash on me, that's par for the course. Not surprised right there. A lot of clips are going to play on the program tonight that we have to get into because Triple H spoke out leading up to Survivor Series. Paul Heyman spoke out leading up to Survivor Series. A lot of that's going on. Now, there were several comments done because Complex Magazine did an interview with him, and they were showing off the whole headquarters. But there were a couple things that stood out in this whole commentary, so let's get into that. So I'm going to take a story from Sports Illustrated, talk about the fact of how WWE is stacked with premier level stars performing at the highest levels. Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, but to a lesser extent, Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Randy Orton. And most of 2025 has been built around the retirement of John Cena, which we know Cena won't be back next year. And the future of the company. All those stars we mentioned right there, all but one are over 40. Rollins is 39 years old. But that's the stars they have right now, all 40-year-olds. Go back the same way it was with WCW when it was Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Diamond Dallas Page. I mean, that's what we had. Lex Luger, Ric Flair, Roddy Piper. Like it was, Bret Hart, all across the board. We were going with a lot of older talent holding up the front. Macho Man Randy Savage, all holding up the front right there. And that was the top of the card. And it was very hard for other people to go and get up to that spot. Triple H, is he concerned about the aging roster? Hardly. So with Complex, he spoke about the roster and not only gave high praise to the current crop of top stars, but he also praised the up-and-coming talent that he does. The propaganda he's going to put out here, it's pretty thick. Triple H has gotten really good at creating the narrative he wants to put out there. And he really believes in it. That's okay with him, but it's not something I'm going to go with. Quote, when people talk about the business now and they talk about where our talent are at, yeah, the top players are all in top positions and they're a bit older. But the thickness and the depth of what is underneath them is what I'm most excited about because the field is deep. This business is going to be in good shape for a long time. But we can, of course, say that you have the talent at the top. But we all know that the same thing happens with WWE on a regular basis. The same people on the top that have been up there for 10 years or more. When you're looking back at who in that list he talked about, Roman Reigns has been up there, since 2014, 2013, maybe even more than that. Cody Rhodes, we've seen on television since 2007. CM Punk, we've seen since 2009, I think it was. See, the early ECW days. And Brock Lesnar since 2002. And then we go to Seth Rollins. Again, somebody who's been around since the first Full Sail edition of NXT. That still counts. Also part of the Shield. Sami Zayn. 10 years on that main roster. And Randy Orton, also another 2002. And you're talking about guys that all came in through Florida Championship Wrestling or Ohio Valley Wrestling. Let's make that. The only exceptions would be Seth Rollins came from Ring of Honor. Sami Zayn would come from Ring of Honor. If we could put Kevin Owens in that list, but of course we don't know if he's ever going to be able to come back healthy to ever compete again. But there you go. And Survivor Series, you see the names they have up front. Usos, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Roman Reigns on one side. The other side, Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, Logan Paul. I mean, it's there, and we got all the names. And that's the 10 names that they feel like are deemed worthy to be on those spots in War Games coming up this Saturday. Now, he mentions the upcoming men's War Games match. Quote, the thing about War Games this year is that the field is wide open. Between a Brock Lesnar, between Roman, Punk, Cody, to so many others. And that's not even counting the new generations of the Braun Breakers, the Bronson Reeds, and the younger guys that are up and coming. There's been a lot of stories coming out here that have been critical of what Triple H has been doing right now with the product. From Bleacher Report, they go on to talk about the fact that between subpar booking and untimely injuries, the antagonists have led to dwindling fan interest in the main event seen on SmackDown and Raw. Drew McIntyre can't seem to win when it matters most. Seth Rollins sidelined indefinitely amid his biggest push ever. Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed can't ascend beyond a certain level until WWE wants to pull the trigger on them. And there's creative staleness on both brands, being the biggest heel for the company. The final few months are traditionally a lull period for wrestling, but basic storytelling and repetitive matches have been a recurring issue for the company throughout the year. And whether something might have caught fire, they almost immediately extinguished it due to a failure to follow up accordingly. They bring up R-Truth's departure and wouldn't capitalize on that. John Cena's heel turn, another reason. But nevertheless, Survivor Series is fine. Tickets are selling, no problem. He goes to the rest of the things right now, the creative staleness. CM Punk being World Heavyweight Champion does have potential, but there's nothing new about him being involved with the Vision and the Bloodline. Judgment Day have been stuck in mid-card purgatory for many months, waiting for Liv Morgan to return from injury to move their story forward. El Gran Americano spinning his wheels. Becky Lynch's rivalry with Maxine Dupree is progressing at a snail's pace. Cody Rhodes has decisively defeated Drew McIntyre on 2 separate occasions to retain the Undisputed Championship, but all signs point to them facing off for a 3rd time at Survivor Series. Then you have Damian Priest, Aleister Black at odds after 5 months. The Women's U.S. title has been horribly handled. The tag team title scene has cooled off. The MFTs are a dead-end group. Let's not even mention the Wyatt Six. Only Sami Zayn and Ilya Dragunov's open challenges for the U.S. title haven't injected any sort of light to the blue brand in the last few months. And ticket sales for SmackDown shows have been sluggish. Returning to the same cities we were in months ago with less fans in the buildings, it's a cause for concern. TKO and the other powers that be in the company are gradually coming to the realization that not everything they touch turns to gold. So in the story, they also close out and say that Triple H created plenty of goodwill with fans when he took over from Vince McMahon in December 22. TKO has entered the picture, giving the company more of a corporate feel with many of the moves that have been made both in front and behind the cameras. And WWE remains more capable than, of satisfying fans with strong shows when it wants to. Under this booking hierarchy that we have of Triple H at the top, it's not going to change. And I'm going to continue to be on this show continuously saying, if you want to see changes at all, it's going to be when Triple H goes. It's not going to get any better under Triple H. Let's just make that clear. He is a coach with a lot of talent on a team. It's like a football coach or NFL coach that will never make the Super Bowl, because he's never going to be able to go and do anything to really take that roster to the level to make it mainstream once again. He's not going to be able to do it. And let's just be clear about that. Let's just we can't beat around the bush anymore. And until this point, I will continue to go ahead and harper around this point, and I will continue to say this. We'll repeat it like a broken record because it needs to be said. And there's a lot of reasons why. And this problem is not isolated to WWE. I said it last week that AEW is in the same place. Just because I'm not putting Tony Khan's face on the front of the graphics and putting him in the headline doesn't mean he's not without criticism. It's very clear on both sides. WrestleNomics put out a new report because everybody's talking about the fact that how many Raw and SmackDown matches ended with another DQ or no contest because of a run-in or countout. And it shows how much WWE and to an extent AEW is relying on non-finished match results. Using data sourced by Cage Match, they noticed that this outcome became non-existent when Triple H took over. And it stayed that way for a while. But then last year, non-finishes started coming back again, and have really taken off in 2025. The Raw, week after week of Judgment Day and now the Vision interfering in a match, SmackDown going from the Bloodline to the MFTs ruining everything, but how bad is it? WrestleNomics says that going into 2022, 12.5% of Raw and SmackDown matches ended with DQ, countout, or no contest. And when Triple H took over, pretty much took that down in half. But then the last year, you're seeing Raw non-finishes back up to 10% and 12% on SmackDown. And then when you look at NXT, 4% of matches go for DQ, no contest, or countouts. Or 1% when it comes to main roster PLEs. They just kind of stay where it is. Most part, they don't let that happen. They at least have the right idea to say, okay, give us a finish at the end of every match on a pay-per-view. They at least do that. So that's an interesting stat they brought out this week. That was pointed out this week. Now about what's been said out there in the media about this week, because there's been a lot of commentary out there that have gone to bash away at what is not going right so far. But let's give a little bit of glass half full. So ESPN actually commenting about the fact that they were promoting Survivor Series. You can see it all across their NBA coverage, across their coverage across the board on sports, and having folks on First Take and other places. Burke Magnus, the ESPN president, says the partnership has been great so far, and Survivor Series will be a good measuring stick. Quote, we are obviously very familiar with Nick Khan and the team over there. We've had engagement with them for years in much smaller ways. They're fantastic to work with. We're looking forward to WrestleMania this year, which would be our first. We've had the shows we've already done. And Survivor Series this weekend will actually be a good measuring stick to see how it's going. But in terms of the interaction between the team at WWE and us, it's been great. So we're not talking about the content. It's the relationship that WWE has. Nick Khan, Ari Emanuel, Mark Shapiro, those folks. And I guess Triple H to an extent. So they're all buddy-buddy right now, but we don't know if that's going to just stay like that always. Like, at some point, that relationship is so fresh. We're only, 2.5 months into it? So it's going to take, we're at least 2 months into it now. You can't really tell anything about the ESPN relationship yet about where they're going to be at. So let's get into that part, and we'll move on and take some of the things that were brought up. Now, there wasn't much being said about what had happened with wrestling this month, or wrestling right now, in terms of how WWE is performing. We've just seen a lot of things out there, but we'll go ahead and bring some of this on here and talk about it. First off, someone on X actually asked about what was the worst booking move of 2025 by the WWE. One person saying Gunther tapping the Jey Uso, Drew and LA Knight booking, Cena's retirement through choices, Travis Scott impacting the main event result, Jey Uso winning the Royal Rumble, champions not wrestling weekly on TV, them not pushing LA Knight. There was a lot of comments from people who were asking about that. Interesting. ESPN put out recently their top 30 best pro wrestlers under 30 in the world today. And of course, your top of the chart here are mostly the WWE folks, okay? Dominic Mysterio is number 1. Kyle Fletcher from AEW is 2. Rhea Ripley 3. MJF 4. Tiffany Stratton 5. Braun Breaker, Blake Monroe, Obi Femi, Roxanne Perez, Leon Slater round out the top 10. So MJF and Kyle Fletcher are the only two that make it up to that top spot as in the top 30. That's it. Very interesting on that. But of course, a skewed list. So everybody took those bulletin board comments right there from Triple H about the age of main event talent and how War Games is being set up. And Triple H can feel good about himself. That's how he wants to feel about it. He feels like everything's doing really well. Okay, fine. That the business is going to be in good shape for a long time. So the business in terms of the financials, with the broadcast deals they have in place, with TKO brokering all these deals for them, of course the business is going to be fine. But the creative is going to suffer as long as Triple H is in charge. That's just it. And Tony Khan in the same face will also have that same problem. But for Tony Khan, it's just there's no movement up. Now, who says all this? Well, there's a lot of things we could talk about this. AEW could also go the same route because they just crowned Samoa Joe their world champion once again. And you want to figure out what are you going to do with that coming up? Dave Meltzer says that as a world champion, I think they should be focusing on young guys now because when the company has to be in a rebuilding mode because so many of their top talent are older. Let's go into that part. Let's hear what Dave says.
I don't think Joe should have been the guy. I mean, Joe's been in that spot before, and he'll do well in the spot. It's just that I think that if you're going to make your world title, something to be used for your future, put somebody in there for your future, whether it's Kyle Fletcher, who's the obvious choice. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, well, he's young and he can wait. And it's like, I think I've been hearing that about so many people in wrestling right now that it's kind of like, just do it. You know what I mean? It's like, let's get some young guys. Make some young guys stars, like real stars, not giving them some wins. They're on the card. And I know they've done a really good job with Fletcher. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's really improved as a star, but you make some superstars. Joe was a big star. I mean, he's a very reliable guy. You can put him in that spot. He'll do well. But I think that as a world champion, I think that they should be focusing on young guys now.
Okay. But this is where some bookers really are kind of like missing the spot. That they don't want to go for somebody younger, or at least just give somebody the chance to go and try to sink or swim. Because that's the biggest problem we have. For AEW and for WWE, they don't want to take chances. I said this several weeks ago. That also doesn't change either. It doesn't change what I said either about this because I really feel that way. So what are we going to do about that? We're still in the same place we were before. And it's no surprise at all. I've talked about it. Let me go back a couple weeks ago. There hasn't been as much damage done by Triple H or Paul Heyman or Bruce Pritchard and others to completely go ahead and say, okay, that this is not fixable, this is not retrievable, this stuff can be brought back. It absolutely can be brought back. I mean, we already know, okay, look, you get a new coach in there with a great trove of talent, you can turn this whole season around, like a football metaphor, like a baseball metaphor, like a sports metaphor. All the tools needed, that cliche, they have it to go ahead and get themselves right into the right place. We talked about rebuilding. I said that 2 weeks ago on this program. You build 4 pillars, you rebuild the brands. And I don't know if the creative process in the writer's room is really getting that much chance to go and do anything like that at all. But I'd rather give them a chance to go and, not get shot down every time. Let's see if you come up with something better. Like, let's entice, let's try to motivate these people to go do something better. Because I'm sorry, the folks in the writer's room that are telling the writers that what they're giving, they're going to shoot down, the leadership doesn't know what they're doing. They're all wrestlers. They book a certain way. They have their favorites. That's what they're doing right now. Yeah. And I also said the same about Tony Khan going back as well, because we're in that same level of everything where there's just not an answer. And I feel like I've been stuck in this rut for several weeks now, having to talk about this. Like even go back to last week, or actually 2 weeks ago. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about the fact that Triple H, his days are numbered. I said that last week. The product that they have out there is not working, and eventually there's going to have to be a change. Now, TKO needs to have reasons for that to happen. They'll figure that out soon enough. But now I believe more and more every day that when Triple H was given the chance to go ahead and run creative on his own after Vince McMahon was let go in 2022, he ran with it and was able to go ahead and work with what he had until there was nothing else left in the creative bin for him anymore. Nothing new to think of, which is basically what all these former wrestlers and Triple H as the booker are at right now. There's no creativity at the top. Nothing fresh at the top. And the same thing goes for AEW. Listen, AEW is not without their own issues. They're back to the lull they had before last year at this time. Triple H, at the end of the day, should have only been a transitional figure in the booking committee. That's it. But somehow, Nick Khan, I think, might have something to do with this, where he vouched for Triple H, and Triple H was going to be able to go ahead and take over and do what Vince McMahon could do. But it's very clear that Triple H is incapable of booking or leading the charge for the future of this company like Vince McMahon did when he was at the helm. And I'm not talking about the last couple of years. I'm talking about from the 80s into the Attitude Era, because he did make changes. You have to give him credit. He did make changes, and then made changes a second time when we got into after the invasions of WCW and ECW and went to the Ruthless Aggression Era. He at least made changes. So I give that credit where credit's due. And they did try other ideas that did not work. The whole point is that you did see new stars that would find their way up. The biggest problem we always had was, look at the way they got there. But somehow they did, because the talent still supersedes whatever bad booking there is. Triple H right now with Paul Heyman and Bruce Pritchard and everybody else, they are holding back on purpose talent. They're incapable. I think in AEW, it is a bit of a different story, because you're going to see stars like MJF or Kyle Fletcher that will break through. Somehow, some way, they're going to still be able to break through the mold. And when the crowd gets into it, they're going to realize, and you know what, Kyle Fletcher, I think next year will become a world champion. I do believe that's going to happen. I have better odds. I would give better odds to that happening than I expect Braun Breaker or Bronson Reed or any of the pillars I talked about, Trick Williams, when I talk about Jacob Fatu, I don't expect any of them to become world champion next year. I don't see it. But if you had to make me a betting man, I expect AEW will actually put someone younger in that world title spot as a world champion before the WWE does. Because they're going to stick to the stars they have. But if you're not going to create something new around some of these stars, then what are we doing? Because that's what has to happen. I mean, at least if you're going to have the older stars here, let's start making some changes with them. Freshen up their gimmicks a little bit. But they don't want to do gimmicks. They don't want to make any changes like that at all. We're moving storylines at a sluggish pace because they don't know what they're doing. And who's been talking about that? Who was somebody who listened to on a regular basis on Monday nights before Sportskeeda decided to go ahead and drop the WrestleBinge stuff? I would listen to Vince Russo several times a week with Dr. Chris Featherstone or with Mac Davis, reviewing Raw and SmackDown. And I'd watch Vince Russo doing the podcast in Bro, or his own content that would pop up in clips on YouTube. He was on with Ariel Helwani this week. And I've heard a lot of the same commentary before, but we're going to get to this once again. So let's get into that part. Now, here's Triple H with Ariel. This is about Triple H and Tony Khan and their booking styles. This Vince Russo now on the Ariel Helwani show. This happened today as we're recording. Let me go ahead and get into what Vince Russo was saying to Ariel Helwani today about that. In the booking styles of AEW and WWE right now under Tony Khan and Triple H.
By the way, it's I enjoy all the wrestling content, the YouTube channels and all this stuff. And I do believe, if I'm getting this right, you, Eric Bischoff, Jim Cornette, probably not, going on a dinner date or the best of friends, but you all agree as far as your criticisms towards Tony Khan and AEW. There is something to that, right? Like, it seems like a lot of the old guard, if you will, and I say that with the utmost respect, all are preaching for him to make changes. Do you think he pays attention to any of you? Do you think he listens to any of this?
Ariel, let me tell you basically what the problem is. And this is the problem with wrestling in general. This is the problem with the WWE. This is the problem with AEW. They only want to hear the positive. They don't want to hear people like Vince Russo and those other people you mentioned. That's why I'm with JCW, because Violent J wanted to know, Vince, what do we have to do here? Here's the problem. Triple H and Tony Khan are writing a wrestling show that they like. And by writing a wrestling show that they like, they have turned the audience into a niche audience, because there's only a niche audience that likes 90% wrestling. It's not about what they like. When I write for JCW, I'm not writing a Vince Russo show. I'm writing a show for the masses. I'm writing a show for the world. These guys are writing a show that they like. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you like. It's not about you. We all have different tastes. It's subjective. You want to write a show that's going to get you as many eyeballs as possible. And what that means, Ariel, is you need to have a little bit of everything. That's what the Attitude Era was. We had something for everybody.
We're going to go more into Vince Russo in a moment. But I also want to go into the example that there is wrestling out there that is doing a better job of redefining, renovating. And it's just like this. When you have companies out there, the smaller companies out there, they're not the major brands, okay? They're not AEW, not the WWE, okay? And I'm not saying it in any particular order. I'm just doing it by alphabetical order. Now, I've talked about NWA. Okay, they have now taken a shot. Thrillbilly Silas Mason is now their new world heavyweight champion. And to the credit of them, they decided to go and put the belt on him. Great. And this is now a star, 34 years old. He's 33. He's going to be 34 December 24th. And Silas Mason has worked his way up. And he's been around for a long time. Debuted in 2015. So he's been 10 years in the business and has gone through quite a bit to get himself to where he is now. But at the time, he got to the National Heavyweight Championship. Billy Corgan booked him as such. Now World Heavyweight Champion. NWA 77, the biggest show of the year for them. Thrillbilly Silas Mason beating Tom Latimer. Okay, this is months ago. But they're just starting to bring it up now on TV. You know, and everything that's going on with that. But I didn't get to catch the show until afterwards. I don't know if they had it on pay-per-view or not, but I couldn't catch it. But they did do the match, and Silas Mason is now your champion. MLW also taking their chances and putting somebody else out there to be their champion, and also just taking a shot at somebody, which is not easy to go and say either. Now, Mads Krul Kruger, 40 years old, but the one thing about him is that you have him under the mask, and he's a very interesting setup under the Contra unit. And to create a character that he has right now, which has been around for, a good 4 years, maybe 5, I've seen this character, which was just an enforcer figure, where Jacob Fatu and Joseph Samael were the leads with Akira Kwan and all the others of Contra Unit. Mads Krul Kruger being built up over years, becoming the World Heavyweight Champion. Incredible. And, I mean, even though they don't necessarily see Mads Krul Kruger as World Heavyweight Champion to be the main event of the MLW Don Gato partnered event that they had last weekend, that's okay. But what they've done so far, when you talk about the booking and what you're able to go and do, what you can change up and do, one of the things that's been done so far with MLW is that they are taking ideas from other things and just trying to bring together something different, something fascinating. Danny McBride is the owner of Don Gato Tequila. They decided to go with the role of having a luchador dressed up as the owner, Don Gato himself. So back at Variety actually reported about this, and this is August, they actually reported on this, that the brand that Danny McBride created with this boutique tequila brand, he is using it, and McBride would be involved in the creative elements of the MLW showcase in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was put out there for folks to watch, which was a great event, by the way, that it went out there. Great crowd. And by the way, I must say the Don Gato Tequila event, it was amazing how it looked, because it was also taking an experiment on presenting the show, because it was done in a stage. Like it was actually like a concert hall that they did it at. Something that goes back to 1850 they had said on the broadcast. That's what Joe Dombrowski said. And then he took a video wall, which you've seen in other shows. They're usually like in the backdrop of an entrance. But what you're seeing at this show was they actually put a big video wall to cover the back of the stage. And they had it differently visualized for every match they had on the card. The Opera Cup, they had like a whole opera hall looking kind of thing to it. When some other matches, they had whatever. And it looked good on television. It actually looked really good. I was very impressed by that. It's something that I think you could have already done if you were to try to do it back in COVID days. If you were trying to go and do something that was going to be a little bit different because of the fact of you didn't have the crowds that you could have watching. But it actually works for what they're doing. And the show they had this past weekend was really good for what they did. Killer Kross beating Matt Riddle in one of the first matches, the first appearances we've seen of Killer Kross on a TV. I don't know if he was in any other promotions where he's been at. I haven't followed along. But Killer Kross wasn't that long ago in the minds of fans on either WWE or AEW, right? He was main roster star. He's in here. Matt Riddle. They did a nice little number leading up to the match to show the animosity between Killer Kross and Matt Riddle. In just 5 minutes, they set up the feud. They set up the heat. Matt Riddle acting all egotistical because he had already become, a real asshole heel right now in MLW. And that's kind of going with his bad boy image because of what went on, how he left WWE with all the issues with so many different things. You know, all the controversy that left with him anyway. Mystico wins the Opera Cup. Brock Anderson had a pretty good match with Cruel Kruger, but and also we saw Arn Anderson out with him and CW Anderson. So the Andersons all brought together. We're able to go and do some damage to Mads Cruel Kruger, but at the end of the day, Mads Cruel Kruger won. They didn't go long on that match, but they put the match in there. It wasn't a major thing they set up, but in this, they also did a thing where they featured Don Gatto on the broadcast, Filthy Tom Lawler's taking shots of it, you know, and they're featuring it throughout the night. But again, the Don Gatto character, they have it as a figurehead, along with Cesar Duran, Selena Durenta, and all those, as part of this whole thing. And Don Gatto's this figure that is been repurposed into the product to sell tequila. Sounds pretty good to me. And it works. I don't know how well the show did, but I think that's creative. And that's something where, you know, the Opera Cup is something they did their own. They're working on certain matches and certain things they were doing to build up the stars that they have. And they're more than happy to go ahead and take on their partnerships and utilize them without taking away from the feuds they have that are MLW specific throughout. When it comes to Skyscrapers and their dominance of the tag team division going against the Good Brothers, right? And then Akira Kwan with his issues when it comes to Cesar Duran and with Contra Union and all those other things that are going on. They have things that are happening in there, and I can appreciate what the Major League Wrestling's doing. And I only get to see them, once a month? And it's fun, and it's enjoyable. I like it. It looks like they sold out this hall. They're not getting any bigger venues yet, but, you know, give it some time. And as we said last week, they decided to go and go into Charleston and become their home right there. The production has gotten much better in terms of all the backstage stuff, all they're doing with their vignettes looks much better. Like, it does really look much better. The live broadcasts, yeah, they still got to figure that out. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for me. And I can appreciate that. Same, it's basically, I feel like Major League Wrestling is the Ring of Honor that we had 10 years ago when Sinclair Broadcasting had them. They used to have a TV home, and, you know, they're smart enough to go and put their stuff on YouTube. Easy to go and watch. It looks good. They had a lot of formidable stars. You had Shotzi Blackheart and Rebecca Kelly out there tearing it up. Scarlett Bordeaux out there working a match. Haven't got a chance to go and see her wrestle in a while. It's all good stuff. So you got stars you really like over there that are doing really well. And overall, I enjoy it. Oh, that was right. Ala Dawn facing Scarlett Bordeaux and Scarlett getting the win. Good stuff on that pay-per-view. Go look for it on YouTube. It was really worth watching. Now back to Vince Russo and the fact of how Triple H and Tony Khan are booking for themselves. They are booking for the most loyal of fans when they have to go and book for mainstream. And we can say it over and over. But we were hoping Tony Khan would be capable of that. We're starting to realize that's not going to be a strong suit. That's not for him. And for Triple H, we absolutely know he's not the one. And Tony Khan owns the company, AEW. So it would be up to him to remove himself or be convinced to remove himself from that booking spot. That's probably more possible than Triple H. But Triple H would have to be removed. And it could very well happen. And if he gets removed from that spot, does Stephanie McMahon stay around in that spot? Because I think there's a lot where that whole family's there. I just think there's going to be some point where anything that's with McMahon relations is no longer going to be a part of this product. I think TKO will eventually no longer have anyone with relation to Vince McMahon of any way, shape, or form as part of this programming. I think he will get let go. And I'm going to make the prediction right now that by the end of 2026, Triple H will not be chief creative officer. He will not be booking the show. By the end of 2026, we're not going to see him in charge of booking. He's not going to be part of creative. I don't see it happening. Maybe it won't be exactly the way I'm saying it, but I don't think that Triple H will have the kind of authority that he has right now. He's going to lose that. Who knows if he gets reassigned or whatever he does. But I think that's what's going to happen. Back to Vince Russo and Ariel Helwani.
By doing that, now you open up your window. Now you allow yourself to let people come in to watch a wrestling show that would have never watched wrestling before. Tony Khan is writing a show that he loves, but it doesn't matter what he loves. What does the world want? There are millions of casual wrestling fans out there not watching wrestling anymore. And again, I'm going to go back to JCW. That's why I'm here, because they understood that. And Violent J knew we've got to go above and beyond those that watch wrestling on a weekly basis. There's an entire world out there that's not watching anymore.
With MLW, I'm making the point because when I look at what has been incorporated right now, the Lucha Underground stuff was something that El Rey Network and Robert Rodriguez allowed to go and be brought in because he was trying to bring in something special, something different. Wrestling Society X was the same idea. It was something that was an outside concept that could be bringing in a different audience to wrestling because of the storylines they had and the characters and everything that was being built around the Lucha Libre type of aspect. That was part of the thing they'd done. So it has that flair. It has that flavor. And that's what made MLW stand out to me. Because right now they are the best managed, best booked promotion there is in the country. Now, of course, there's other independents out there that you could say otherwise, but I'm watching the ones I can watch on TV. And I can watch MLW monthly on TV. They give me a good TV product, and I'm very happy with it. Looking forward to Battle Riot. Of course, there's a concept that's the same as Royal Rumble. Totally fine, but I enjoy it. All there is to it. Now, there is another part that got a lot of this in here. Another name you could put into the mix of who is doing really well in wrestling, and Vince Russo is not the first person to go and say it, is Logan Paul. He's praising Logan Paul here with Ariel Helwani. Here's what he said.
What do you like about WWE right now or pro wrestling? JCW aside, because I know you're very excited about that, but to end on a positive note, if you will.
Ariel, you keep getting me in trouble because it's so positive.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Not one thing?
I'll tell you who I like. And it's really, seriously, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing because the best guy in professional wrestling today is not a wrestler. That's embarrassing.
Who's that?
Logan Paul is a star. Mm-hmm. A star. Unbelievable. You talk about the it factor. This guy reeks of it. And the fact of how long he's been doing this and how good he is, listen, man, that should challenge every professional wrestler out there. And, here's another thing. And
we'll leave that there. But with Logan Paul, he's not a pillar that I brought up in the top four. I'm still saying younger stars. But if you want somebody right now that's going to push the needle, that's actually going to make an impact right now, if he got the belt, is Logan Paul. And I'll tell you this too. Of course, the juvenile delusional fandom, they're not in support of Logan Paul. They don't like the fact he was the U.S. champion. They don't like the fact that he was Money in the Bank holder. They don't like he's been given these spots. He's looked at as a part-time wrestler. How is he going to come in here and do wrestling? Got it. But Logan Paul, we need more of that. Now, one of the folks I saw that is coming out and trying to do some more stuff is I Show Speed. I saw him working in an NXT setup where he did a whole thing, it looks like at the Performance Center, and did a whole event where he did his first match. Okay, great. So you can do that kind of stuff. And you can bring out a Logan Paul that has a large following. And the WWE's actually done a pretty good job of holding him in there. So if you want to do something pretty soon where you want to say CM Punk and Logan Paul, they were already kind of setting that up. You want to put him to the main event? I don't think you have to necessarily go after CM Punk. I mean, you could do that. But I actually would like to go and see Logan Paul and Cody Rhodes. And I'd like to see Logan Paul win. Logan Paul would absolutely be, he would be getting the attention. I don't care if you're going to like it or not like it, but you're going to pay attention to him. It's going to shock the world. There will be mainstream fans out there that'll be like, really? This guy? And imagine if Logan Paul gets in here and does this. Imagine if you brought in Brother Jake and you bring in the mix, oh, look here, the best of boxing, the best of wrestling, and do a whole deal with them. Imagine what you could do. Logan Paul, there's a lot of upside. We've already seen he can wrestle pretty well. And he can still work this limited schedule that he already has, his contract. You got a contract with him. Use him. Not every time you have to go back to Cleveland, but you know what? Let him go and become champion. Let him be on every pay-per-view. It's fine. I would actually prefer that over what they're doing right now with the same 4, 5, 6 characters they have. Logan Paul would be a move that I could see Triple H and Paul Heyman and Bruce Pritchard and all those folks doing. You could make that move. You could probably make them buy into that move. And TKO should actually be lobbying for that move to happen. Put the belt on him. You already put a belt on him. He's already won a secondary belt. Make him a champion in 2026. I agree with that too. As Survivor Series, they got him in the match. Can we do something with him to lead into the feud that absolutely steers up the pot and says, okay, Logan Paul is destined to be world champion? And let's just do it. It's not going to be an issue. If you want to do it now during WrestleMania season, go for it. You can bank on Logan Paul. I don't see why nobody doesn't think that way. But at this point, the company is in such a position that they can't afford not to do it. I really think that. Now, there's another part when it comes to the WWE TNA partnership. Vince Russo talked about that with Ariel Helwani. Here's what he said.
Why do you think WWE is doing this, having this business relationship with them?
Man, listen, the WWE is global. The bigger, the better. And I think that's the way they look at it. You know, there are some people look at it that they're personally doing this against AEW. Listen, having worked there, I don't believe that. I don't believe the WWE is really looking at AEW as competition. I just believe, man, they are trying to build a global empire, and, acquiring, TNA is just part of that plan.
So, okay, that's interesting. You say that you don't believe that WWE views AEW as competition, yet they do actively counter-program them. And so why do you think they do that? I mean, it's not a coincidence, right, that they're popping up on the same days as their big shows. So why do you think they do that?
I think they do that to F with them. I think they do that because they can. And there's a lot of that involved in wrestling. There's a lot of showmanship involved in wrestling. And listen, man, here's the bottom line. If they can do that, then Tony Khan can do the same exact thing. Wrestling games have been going on forever,
So I didn't even talk about the fact that AAA actually had an event. It was on YouTube, and it was put out there at the same time as Full Gear, but it did not get any kind of the press that Full Gear did. But even that Full Gear, it lacked what I really wanted on that pay-per-view. That's just really clear about that. But the thing is that at this point, we're getting towards the end of the year. We've already been about a month removed from Bound for Glory, and Carlos still doesn't have an announcement on when TNA is going to have a new TV deal. The whole talk about AMC TV, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. So where are we going with this? I don't know. But we haven't seen anything yet that really stands out about what's going to be happening with it anyway. And then Ariel Helwani asks about how Tony Khan's been doing booking AEW, and here's his points too.
So you know what it's like to write a TV show on a weekly basis, sometimes multiple, right? Tony Khan right now has that job. He's the CEO. He's the head booker. He's all that. Plus, is in a very important position for an NFL team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, plus a Premier League football team, Fulham. He's got this analytics business as well. Knowing what it's like to be a head writer, are you shocked that he is able to do all of this at the same time, that he's able to have all these different jobs?
I'm not shocked, but the question is he doing it well? And what I mean by that is, listen, we've had 6 years to grow these numbers. have these numbers grown in 6 years? That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the same thing with the WWE. Have these numbers grown? I understand social media. I understand hits. I understand, globally and international. I understand all that. But the bottom line is, has your television product increased over the last 5 years? And it hasn't. So, and I've got to tell you this, Ariel, listen, it's a full-time job. There's no question about it. When I was writing just Raw before SmackDown, it was 24/7. No question about it. So the fact of the matter that Tony is doing all these things, and God bless Tony. I mean, seriously, the dude's a workhorse. But I'm here to tell you, this is a full-time job. And you are not going to have, maximum audience unless you're doing this full time. It is.
Now, I get where Vince is coming from with this, but when it comes to the television product, the two main promotions are not doing a good job with television. I'm at the point right now where it's hard for me to go ahead and really put on Dynamite and say, okay, what am I going to go and catch? They just did Full Gear. Sure, they got a couple things they can bring off of what happened at Full Gear, but they're dealing with other things. They got Continental Classic, and it's Thanksgiving weekend. They're kind of just like going along. They'll have shows for Christmas at the Hammerstein Ballroom, that's Hammerstein, right? And so, everybody's kind of just doing their own thing. It's a lull right now after Survivor Series. We're not paying attention to too much of what's going on. We'll have Sunday Night's event in 3 weeks. We can talk about that coming up, or actually in 2 weeks, right? So we can talk all about that. What it comes down to is television's not doing well anyway. But both of these companies are profiting immensely from the TV deals they have. With WWE, the fact that they're not performing, not giving a new audience, not trying to go and build a television product that's going to bring in a mass audience. I'm sorry, 2.8 million viewers on Netflix globally is embarrassing. You have a lot more fans out there that you could be drawing in from social media to watch the content. It could absolutely be done. Watch when Stranger Things comes out right now, season 5. It just came out today as I'm recording. I guarantee you're going to hear the numbers that go across for Stranger Things are going to go across the board. For weekly content, it's much different. And for Netflix, they don't necessarily have any programming that is weekly content like that, especially 3 or 2.5 hours like they do. Now, it looks great. Absolutely. I mean, the whole presentation is great, but what they're actually delivering in terms of content, neither program is really giving us anything right now that's super compelling. Bits and pieces, maybe you could say for AW, and for WWE, I don't see it. The creativity is just not there anymore. It's just match, and whose line is it anyway? I try to go back and look. I really do, but I don't feel anything's there that I'm really interested by. But that's the part of what they have. Now, the ratings, the thing too is that if you're not making all the changes you want to go and do when it comes to the ratings, you're already at a crossroads because of the fact that linear television continues to fall smaller and smaller each time. We already saw that the Nielsen big data numbers. You got CW complaining about it on behalf of WWE for their NXT show. AW right now took a hit as a result, but for the most part, they're in a spot that's, not as big a company and not as big as WWE with the kind of issues that they have with TKO. Because here's the thing. Tony Khan only has to answer to himself. Triple H has to answer to a lot of people. He is not in charge, not in control. He's a cog. He's a mid-level manager. And so if anything is going to change on that, that's where TKO wants to go and do that. For Tony Khan, yeah, he's doing all those other things, but what is he doing to go and push the needle to create other programming? They've kind of done what they can with some of the stars they have to do something a little bit more interesting. And they've done that to go and help complement the other programming they have on the other channels along the Warner Brothers Discovery set of networks or whatever they have. They've done a good job of leveraging for DC Comics, for, TCM, or for TBS or TNT in terms of the content they have over there too. They've done quite a bit. So they're doing a lot to go and help in the cross-promotional effort for themselves with their partners. And of course, you could say the same thing right now with WWE, but really, neither one's really kind of bringing out and trying to break to a mainstream audience. And the thing is, if you're going to put this all out on social media, you're repurposing television that people are not sitting down to go and watch regularly. I mean, look, for the fact that SmackDown still pulls about 1 million viewers, that's amazing. I'm still surprised by that. But that's all you got. You have not found a way to draw the 6 billion or so social media followers you have across all platforms for WWE to even go ahead and come in and watch the television. If you do, you get what? Sub 3 million viewers globally to sit there and watch the television product. That's it. That's what we're down to. And without social media, we used to have it where we had 7 to 8 to 10 million viewers on a given night watching. With social media and the magnitude that it has, you're incapable of creating long-form programming. And it can be done. Listen, the matches can complement to what they're doing, but there's nothing compelling or interesting that's bridging together all these matches and all these feuds in a way that people care about. The conflict, there's nothing there that people can relate to or feel like, oh, so all these athletes facing each other and just being mad at each other. No love triangles. No outside things that people can relate to relate to the wrestlers. They don't want to use gimmicks. They don't want to use personas. They don't want to create characters. But those things were done so that you could bring in an audience outside that could relate to someone being that we don't like that's rich, or someone who's successful, or someone that is, picket, or the horror crowd to watch some of the things they do with some of the wrestlers and the gimmicks that they make. Took that all away. Like all the other different genres that you have, the comedy, the horror, it's like almost like movies. You're creating, here's a comedy, here's an action, here's a thriller, here's that, and you're trying to bring things in that people would watch on television or in a movie, and you're trying to draw them in to be a part of it. When you had soap operas, we had drama, we had thrillers, suspense, humor, and a lot of different things, and horror. You could do a lot of that. Soap operas had all those things. We don't have that right now. And that's the part that all these wrestling companies need to go and have more of. But they don't. Like I said, when we're getting to MLW, we got the cartel type stuff, right? Which is very popular. We like Narcos and things like that. You got the horror stuff with Mascool Kruger. You got, Shotzi Blackheart, Rebecca Kelly, and the kind of level that they go over the horror with that. And then all this international flair with the Japanese talent, with the Mexican talent, the whole Lucha Libre kind of feel to it. There's a lot to be fascinated by, curious of. If they can get the more people to watch on their platform, hell, if MLW had an ability to go and get on Netflix, I'm sure they would probably get a pretty good audience off of that. It probably would go viral with some things, but we don't know. Now let's get back to the focus of what's going on with Survivor Series coming up this weekend. And we'll talk about the matches, do quick preview predictions on that. But here is Paul Heyman, a true propagandist right now, who at one point with ECW, when his back was against the wall and he couldn't pay his wrestlers, put out quite an amazing revolutionary product. Well, he's living off those days now, some 25 years later. And here's the kind of stuff he's saying about Survivor Series to go and promote that on First take on ESPN.
What will make this War Games different from ones in years past?
Well, I mean, first of all, the cast that's in this War Games is just, this is the greatest assembly of talent on either side. I mean, just the three people that you saw inside the ring at the top of the segment: Roman Reigns, the tribal chief; there's CM Punk, the world champion; there's Cody Rhodes, the undisputed champion. These are three of the biggest stars in WWE, plus the greatest tag team of all time, admittedly, the Usos. And then on our side, you have, my God, Brock Lesnar, you have Bron Breakker, you have Drew McIntyre, you have Bronson Reed, you have Logan Paul, and you have Paul Heyman out there as well. Plus, this is not only something where we understand the tradition of War Games and we have to deliver the greatest War Games of all time, and we're very cognizant of that fact.
Now, he blurts out all those names. And I can think about, all right, with Brock Lesnar, you think about like the tear that he was, just destroying people left and right. F5, Suplex City not long ago. Remember when Suplex City was such a big deal and everybody would say it and everybody bought shirts and the whole deal with it? Or Brock Lesnar would go out there with like a Money to Make briefcase and he's holding it like a stereo, like a boombox, all those kind of things. Where is Brock Lesnar today? He's just so out there because he's been out there before. Roman Reigns, the Bloodline. That was drama. That was soap opera. That was suspense. And everything that was emotional and heart-wrenching and dramatic in that spot. The sibling rivalry, the brotherly love, all that was encompassed in the Bloodline. That's why we enjoyed that storyline so much. That's why it brought attention from other people. And SmackDown used to go and get 2.5 million viewers at that time on Fox. Up to 3 million viewers because of that. Where's that all gone? Cody Rhodes' story to go ahead and finish the story of his father. That was a great story they told. Where does that? Like, the thing is, all these names you brought together now, and then you put in Bronson Reed, Bron Breakker because they're part of the vision. Okay. What do we got left? It's flat coming in. Sure, you got all these stars assembled for this match, but they're all coming in flat. All of them. And that's the biggest problem. Now, here's what we got with Paul Heyman saying about Survivor Series, which also got some interest in here. Got a lot of people going viral about it.
We have to top all the previous War Games, but also this is really an infomercial for WrestleMania. Because as you must know by now, there's such a huge publicity push out there that the individual tickets for WrestleMania Saturday and WrestleMania Sunday go on sale on Black Friday, on this Friday. So we're out there just showing the world, hey, check out this spectacle. Check out what WWE is about in our biggest show of the year, WrestleMania, individual tickets going on sale. This is our audition for the world to come to Vegas for WrestleMania, at the same time giving the most bang for the buck in the greatest War Games of all time.
See, the thing is, Paul Heyman was great doing his own stuff when it comes to ECW and promoting that product because it was his. At the end of the day, he was part of it, and he was, and all tremendous ownership to prove himself. To do it for this company right now under TKO, it doesn't feel sincere, it doesn't feel honest, it just feels like he's just doing his job. And the guy that had all that passion and spirit some 25 years ago, Paul E., he's not this guy. He's not. He's gotten fat off the calf, and he's here now, and he's still part of this because of his legacy. But he has not done much lately to contribute to anything that we've seen right now. I think the Bloodline was the last thing we saw. This Vision thing has not worked. It has been DOA since day one. I have felt nothing for this. It just feels like another variation of the Monday Night Messiah that Seth Rollins did several years ago before COVID. The same thing here. It's just no change to it. And it's just Seth Rollins needs to have another Shield. I don't know. He needs to have an entourage. Anyways. Seth Rollins had some opinions. He was on Bert Kreischer's show. I'm not going to talk about that. His deal with social media, whatever. And there was a part that Dave Meltzer came on Wrestling Observer Radio talking about the grifters of AEW and making the case of why AEW is in good shape right now, even though you could say things about the ratings and they're not doing well in that respect. But everything else, they are.
It's really funny, kind of like the grifters. They're so anti-AEW. I had to have a budget, and he doesn't have a budget. And it's like, dude, they used to cut my budget. It's like, They cut your budget because the frickin' company was on verge of losing $80 million in a year. They had to cut the budget, like with Cornette talking about, you guys like Ricochet are stealing money from a rich kid. And it's like...
By the way, he was referring to Eric Bischoff before that, but let's continue.
The rich kid's making money. It's like, imagine like a wrestler from the past of all things getting mad that talent is getting paid because the company's revenues are high. Super high, really, other than not compared to WWE, but compared to everybody else in history. And it's like, you're how are you stealing money from a rich kid when the company is a profitable company? It's like kind of like, it's like you can criticize it all you want, but update your material, because the stuff about losing money that not just certain people, but all these people, they come at me and all this. How much profit are they making? It's like a lot. Okay. Do you know what $185 million? Well, this year it's $180 million. You know what $180 million does to a budget in a wrestling company? That's a lot of money. So if you want to say that the ratings are down, they are. You want to say they're struggling with live attendance, they are. You want to say the pay-per-views are too long, sometimes they are. But the pay-per-views generally are very well received. But if you're going to talk about the idea of budget and money and losses and all of that, it's like you need to get some new material because the stuff doesn't work anymore.
Now, when it comes to AEW, remember, they now have their pay-per-views on HBO Max. So whatever advertising revenue they're making, the audience are bringing in, and the pay-per-views and what HBO Max is able to collect from those pay-per-views or subscriptions, they're monetizing the $180 million a year that they're getting off of AEW. Again, I ask, what is Netflix getting for the $50 million, the $500 million they're spending on WWE, right? Like, what's the return on investment for them right now? I don't know if subscriptions have gone up. They're not charging an extra fee for the pay-per-views over there for the international audience. Just a subscription fee. And then for ESPN, yeah. They're just getting for subscriptions over there on that. See, AEW is still selling pay-per-views. You got to buy the pay-per-views outright. Like, no matter what, the model for AEW is the old school model, which has worked before. So either which way, if they're getting 150,000, 200,000 buys at $39.99, $49.99, whatever it is, from Amazon Prime or whatever else, they're making money. And their broadcast partners are making money. That's the difference with them. Those broadcast partners, when it comes to Warner Brothers, with TBS and TNT, with HBO Max, with Amazon Prime and whoever else, they're making money off of them because they are selling pay-per-views. Now, the good thing for AEW is they have those people buying pay-per-views and still in the process, in the habit of buying pay-per-views. With WWE, you only have people that are buying subscriptions. But there's no extra money that is being made off of this. I don't know how much money is being made off the advertising for Netflix. They have to go and take off of that. And what do? Well, they've also butchered the ring that we have to watch on a regular basis for whichever show by doing that. ESPN, they have to go and leverage off of advertising. Same thing for Netflix. And for SmackDown, it's just whatever advertising they can make off of it. But there's no other extra money they're making. All those broadcast partners are spending 3 times as much for WWE because of the brand, because of the content they would deliver, that they have delivered over 40 years, 50 years. And what I'm coming from is the content that WWE does deliver right now is not as quality as it once was. And they're not returning on investment. Now, TKO is going to do a good job of showing these broadcast partners that they're getting a return on investment. For Tony Khan, it's very easy. Look at the pay-per-view numbers. Look at your subscriptions. There's everything you got to say. The pay-per-view buys, they can find out what the show. Oh, look, that's what we got. We see the ratings numbers for 2 of their shows. We know all their numbers. We don't know all the numbers on Netflix. Those are not going to go out there. And sure, we don't know about HBO Max numbers, but we know the pay-per-view numbers. We know the buys. We hear that on a regular basis. Tells you a lot. So financially, both companies are still going to be in good shape going into next year. That's not a question. They're both going to have their broadcast deals. They're fine. But it's the quality, it's the content. It's lacking on both sides. For Tony Khan, it's the point that he isn't going to be capable of growing this company to surpass the WWE. That's not going to happen. He's always going to do what he can to stay at number 2. Will TNA down the line become a competitor to AEW? I don't know. But under Anthem Entertainment, I think they want to go ahead and sell it to WWE anyway. Like Vince Russo was saying. I don't think TNA is going to stay with Anthem for long. I think once they get the TV deal in, then there'll be a way for them to go ahead and parlay that. Because I don't know if they're going to hold on to it. Because if the TV deal doesn't come in, I could see Anthem finding a buyer for it. And they'll hopefully leverage their partnership they have with WWE that are going to do that because of the value they already put into it. And the time and the investment they put into that. And sure, with Ring of Honor, Tony Khan also has put his time towards that to a certain point. But he's also got a subscription service solely for people to go and watch that content. So he's monetizing that. There's money being made in all those areas. And merchandise, there's other things. And WWE, of course, they also make a big deal about merchandise. I don't know how much they make now because of their deal with Fanatics. When they took the whole deal of merch off of their own site and gave the Fanatics to go ahead and leverage, you took away all that. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. I don't know if they've sold more as a result. More merch. I don't know. For WWE, what's their return on investment for TKO? All those seats are selling. All these major tickets are selling for WrestleMania, for all the big 4 pay-per-views, and for all the other events, for the most part. It's a lot to ask of. Okay, I went really long. Let's just give you what Survivor Series is going to provide to us this weekend. And I will be around to go and do this. We'll talk about it. I will do a post show on it on Saturday night. 4 matches on the card. That's all we got. Stephanie Vaquer, Nikki Bella, Women's World Title. Vaquer's going to win. That's not even a question. John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio for the Intercontinental title. I think Dominic's going to win. Some screw job will happen, but I think he's going to beat John Cena. And John Cena will drop that belt. And then they'll figure whoever the last time is now tournament winner is going to be. By the way, interesting that the last time is now tournament, the finals and anything like that, that's all being kept on television. Nothing on the Survivor Series. Very telling about how important that is. Just saying. Women's War Games match is Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Alexa Bliss, Charlotte Flair, AJ Lee versus Lash Legend, Nia Jax, Kabuki Warriors, and Becky Lynch. It'll be the faces that'll win. Let's just make that clear. And on the men's side, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Usos, Roman Reigns, and The Vision versus The Vision, Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, Logan Paul, Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar. Faces will win that match too. That's how I see it. It'll be interesting to what they do with the War Games match and who's going to get hurt and what kind of extreme stuff they'll do. Otherwise, nothing much more to go and say about it. But like I said, I will do a post show on it. We'll let it happen. See what they're going to do. I don't have any expectations towards it. We'll just see if they make anything good out of it. Any good storylines come from any of these matches. But of course, some people out there in the juvenile delusional fandom, they think, oh, Survivor Series a couple of years ago, they did so much from it, and it created so many storylines. I don't see what they were talking about. Anyway, enjoy the Survivor Series this weekend. Enjoy Thanksgiving. And come back for another Wrestling's World podcast because wrestling needs us.